What would it profit? Ooh, profit a man to gain this world, lose his soul. No, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Yeah.
The fire is lit, here come the smoke. Bishop brother is on, here come the hope. On the real, oh yeah, this on the real. With Bishop brother, no they never quick to judge it. Plenty covered, yeah they talk about issues from their view. And they welcome all, they're not defined by their hue. Oh no, they're just speaking of their truth. Be sure to like and subscribe and tune in, you see the fire in their eyes.
Be on the reel today. Had some breaking news in the last week or so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to say this right off the bat before, I mean, cat's out of the bag. We're going to talk about Trump and the 34 felonies, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about that because there's a lot of different ways we can go with this discussion. I want to say this right off the bat. We're certainly, well, I can't speak for you. I'm not endorsing Trump. I'm not endorsing Biden. I'm not endorsing any candidate on this show. That's not the purpose of this show. I guarantee you if something this ludicrous comes out and Biden's on the front of it, he's going to be next. And I'm sure we will talk about him soon too. Because I think Sitting Bull said it best, it's two wings of the same bird.
Yeah.
But beyond all of that, we wanted to talk today about the convictions for Trump, and we wanted to talk about the unintended and intended consequences of the geopolitical situation around this whole thing occurring. So, you know, as I don't know if you got to see it, I didn't get. It's budget season where I work, so I didn't get to see anything live. But I had some friends that watched it live. We know for a fact now the former president, Donald Trump, is a convicted felon, whether you think he did it or not. Here's something a lot of people that look like me and make money like I make, we're going to learn something very valuable today. And that is, I think what we're going to learn through this is it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And we can prove that he is guilty on paper. So, and that's a really crappy situation for a lot of people, especially if they actually didn't do anything wrong. There's a whole new piece of society that is going to learn some very harsh realities about what it means to be a felon. So,
yeah, well, you know, it's one of those things. Ever since our founding, you know, we founded with a constitution. You gotta remember, it's always it's a document and a on paper written by men that was always is always under stress. I mean, is democracy, what we call democracy, if this is democracy, or what we call this constitution in which we live, has always been under stress, strain, whatever you want to call it,
testing.
To see if it lives up to its own words that's printed. We always talk about the Bible is in the Word and it's printed, but the Constitution is something we always live on. So this is a test on many levels. It's a test of our, if you know, we did our first show, just a Christian nation. This particular issue is not about Christianity. This issue is about the Constitution and what it means, and also the reason why Christianity is involved in it is because Christianity has put itself in it. And
it invited itself
in it, as it always has been since the founding of this country, whether you're dealing with the issue of immigration, whether you're dealing with the issue of slavery, whether you're dealing with the issue of women's rights. Christianity has always been a battle between these two entities for supremacy and what we're going to uphold. So when we look at this situation, this is a very serious situation. For me, it's not about who's involved. It's about, this is a test again, because I'm not choosing any side. I'm not endorsing any candidate. That's a script for another day. My issue is how are we going to look at this test just like generations before I did with again slavery, women's rights, all through. It's always been a test.
Yeah.
All our history has always been some fugitive slave act, whatever you want to, Indian removal act, whatever you want to call it. It's always been a test. Is this under our government in which we live? How do we deal with this process where now and we just got it. Your agreement is irrelevant. He is a convicted felon. That's past tense.
In the same way, to be fair, he is a president.
Yeah, a former president.
When you address him, that's President Trump.
Yeah, so President Trump
is a convicted felon.
Convicted felon. So now, what do we do? Now, what do we do in this country? Because people are saying, well, that's it, right? Well, no.
No.
Is it it? Because you got to go now look at what the Constitution says about it. Because you got to remember, he's not only a convicted felon, he's a twice impeached president. So he has a track record. This is not nothing new. He was impeached twice, wasn't convicted. Now he's on the civil side. Not criminal.
Civilly liable, I think was the first one.
And then now he's
a convicted felon
on 34 counts. So now, what do we do? But so it's not so much for me what to do about him. What does this mean for the country? What does this mean for our society? Because this is going to set what they call in legal terms precedent.
Precedent, yeah.
Because if he wins, nobody knows the future. And if he wins, future convicted people will be able to run based on this president. Because up until now, we have not had. Because when he was in office the first time, he was not a convicted felon.
Fact.
So this is now. If he wins now, he will be. They're not going to erase his felonies because he wins. Believe me, it's not going to happen.
Nope.
So if he wins, he will be a convicted felon. So now, president has said. So the question is, we got to be very careful and have a mature conversation about this because this sets precedents. Because we have no precedents before of this. So now that's where the discussion is. How are we going to deal with this? And a lot of people are not going to like the answers that maybe I give. I don't know about you give, but how we're going to deal with this. And
well, I mean, when we look at, I knew I was going to be able to squeeze a death penalty in here somehow. This is why this whole interaction with President Trump. This is exactly why I have an issue with the death penalty in this country. President Trump is a convicted felon. Okay? Also, multiple counts of contempt of court. Okay? Now let me ask you something, Bishop Williams. If I leave here today and I get out on 35 and I do 115 and a 70, right? That's felony. Okay? And they say you got to appear in court on this day, and I don't show up, and I get held in contempt of court. You're the justice expert of the two of us. What happens to me if I say, you know what, I'm not going to court today? What happens to me?
We'll come pick you up and take you to jail. Make sure you
go get a bench warrant.
And make sure you get there next time.
Yeah, and the police are going to facilitate
you getting there next time.
me showing up.
You'll be there next time.
They'll also give me free room and board while I wait.
To get there, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I've been inside Bexar County Jail. That is a nightmare. So this is my problem. And this is like when people tell me that there aren't two justice systems. There are two justice systems. There's a justice system for people who make over $300,000 a year, and then there's the rest of us. That is reality. And then when you get on this side of $300,000, then it breaks up even more, right? Based on privileges, based on socioeconomic background, based on a lot of things. If I had the same charges that Trump had, and I was found in contempt of court for not showing up to a court date, I would go to jail. John G. would be in prison. Right? Okay. So why didn't Trump go to prison when he was found in contempt of court? Not once. I think my last count 9 times during this he was found in contempt. But he didn't go to jail 1 time. Why? I think that answer is pretty simple. He's a wealthy man that has the best lawyers in the country, right? But I didn't say smartest because I heard some things during that. Not a good look, but definitely some of the best, right? This is my problem with the death penalty in this country. Personally, I think if you kill a child, I have no problem with you being put to death. Personally, no issue with that at all. But my problem is if you or me that make less than $240,000 a year murder a child, we are definitely in Texas. We are going to the chamber. We are getting worked. If someone like, I'm not saying Donald Trump did anything like this, but if Donald Trump were to do something like this, or if Joe Biden, or pick one, they would get life in prison without the possibility of parole, not the death penalty. Why? We know why, right? It's the same reason this guy is going to get convicted of 34 felonies. I hope I'm not a prophet, but he is not going to see jail time. He is going to run for election, and because, if I'm just being honest, Biden has done such a terrible job of maintaining his own left flank. By rights, Trump is going to win this election. He's going to become the president of the United States as a felon, which I don't think just because you're a felon you shouldn't have a job. And that actually opens up another discussion. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. If the president can be a convicted felon, why should I have to check a box on a job application that says I'm a convicted felon if I want to work at the Circle K? Because the president's a felon. It's the highest office in the land. If he can be a felon, no one cares about that. Why?
Oh, that's so many. So many moving parts here.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time why I was surprised what happened. Of course not. First of all, you got to factor in a lot of things. You got to factor in the Constitution. You got to factor in common sense. And you got to factor in the will of the people.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Constitution. Let's look at the Trump. Okay. You got to understand how elections work in the country. We have, when it's a presidential year, you have 50 different elections for federal office. It's not one national election.
For the same federal office.
Yeah, we call it a national election, but it's not.
Right.
Texas decides, Mississippi decides, Colorado decides, Wyoming decides, Florida decides, New Hampshire decides who they want to be president.
That's right.
And they get what is called electors. In the Constitution I alluded to earlier, there is no prohibition, I'm going to say it again, you're not going to like to hear it, in the Constitution which determines how a president is elected.
Right.
There is no prohibition for a convicted felon. It is none. And you can't do it you can't backtrack it. It just is none. We had never had one before if he wins, but there's no prohibition that says a person running for office cannot run if he's a convicted felon.
That's right.
However, the ask a question about on your job application, you don't want Joe Molester working down at your local school.
Fact.
So we need to know if he's a felon. We need to have a felon. Your president generally don't have access to your children.
That's
your
fact.
president don't have access. So those are two different dynamics, two different things.
Yeah.
Now, your state decides who can run
vote
in that state. Texas had nothing to do with the citizens of Louisiana and where they can vote. Louisiana had nothing to do with the citizens of Nevada. So you got to understand that, because so many people come to, well, he can't. Yes,
it's over. He can't run.
There's no prohibition. Two, why can a convicted felon run? Because your state says, if your state says pass a law, have a joint session of Congress and have the governor there and say convicted felons can vote in Delaware, convicted felons be able to vote. It's up to your state. There's nothing the federal government can do about it, because the federal government don't run your state local elections.
That's fact.
It's run by state. So you got to understand the Constitution. So he can very much run to the conviction. This country will not, under no circumstances. This is the dirty little secret that everybody want to talk about. This country does not have the stomach, the will. This country will not do to itself what it embarrass itself by putting a former president in jail. Trump knows this. they are not going to put him in jail. It's too embarrassing. It's too we don't have we don't have the fortitude to do it. If we did, when they impeached that man years ago, they would have put him out. They didn't have the guts to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're gonna throw him in prison. You think they're gonna? And they should not gonna put a man in prison who could be president again. Think about it. They're not gonna. He's running again. So maybe if he had 2 terms and he was done, he couldn't possibly run again. But now he could run again and possibly president. I mean, you're not going to take the oath of office from the local Berry County prison.
Right.
It's not gonna happen. Jail. I'm sorry. It's not gonna happen.
Yep.
And so it's just a factor in common sense. We don't have the stomach to do that. So you don't follow the same ground rules of somebody as this. This is more position is not so much because they put a lot of rich white men in prison before we have done that. The position he has is he's been a president,
right?
And that's really what's keeping him in the situation he is. To me, right now, this is really not about his status, his economic status. It's about his status of the office he's held, and further compile that he can hold again. That adds another layer. That even adds another layer to it. He held it.
Yeah.
And he can possibly hold it again. You think they're gonna? I mean, they're not gonna. You know, they're not gonna do it. So we're not gonna do it. So, but as far as him legally, when you're legally able to run again, there's no legal prohibition for him running again.
That's fact.
Now your state cannot put him on the ballot. That's what your state can do. Your state can do a lot of things that the federal government can do nothing about.
That's right.
It's called states' rights.
Yep.
Y'all know that well, right? That was y'all mantra of slavery, states' rights, right? If we still, believe it or not, we still have states' rights.
We still do have states' rights. We just don't have the right to own people anymore, unless they're in prison.
Here's my problem with this whole scenario: is I understood by the Constitution because I studied this. I know this don't surprise me. Where my problem is in this situation is what we are experts at, should be experts at, is the church.
Yeah.
Now you are making this man. We even talk about political fact. That's political. You can argue with constitutional facts about that, but I'm just telling it. There's nothing prohibiting the Constitution legally from running.
It's fact.
Legal fact. Now look at the church. It's my Christian. Our first show was is this a church? Is this a Christian nation? Now y'all are tying this man to my conviction. You're saying Jesus
chose him.
Jesus went through something like this. So now we know Jesus was convicted.
It's fact.
Was was sedition, charged with sedition,
blasphemy,
yep. And you don't go on a Roman cross unless you was convicted. Okay,
that's fact.
They might not use the word conviction like we do, but he was executed.
Yes,
by the state. By the state, right? With the Romans there.
The Roman state.
The Jews, the Roman state. The Jews, they turned them over to the Roman state. So the state of Rome executed Jesus. So what did Jesus do? He healed people, did all this kind of stuff. So he was convicted for sedition against their sin. He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right? They put on a crown and all stuff like that. So the church is using the symbols of our belief.
Yes.
Saying this man like this, and this is why this is about what are we doing? We don't supposed to be in this situation.
Right.
We supposed to be on the side of, hey, you know, if y'all want to do that, but the church is making songs, making him a martyr, tying him to our risen Savior who was executed on false charges, wrongly convicted, executed, and you're saying you're tying him.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
And I'm sure everyone has seen the meme that's going around Facebook right now that says, you know, I follow a person who was convicted in a sham trial, so yes, I'm going to continue to vote for Trump or whatever it is, right? And they're basically equating the trial that Jesus had to the trial that Trump had, right? Well, okay, historically, that is the most asinine thing I think I've ever heard. Those are completely different. I guarantee you there was no jury for Jesus.
No.
That's not how trials worked in ancient Rome.
It was a king.
It was summary judgment.
Yes.
Right? Summary judgment. You don't know what summary judgment is? That basically in our in the modern world, that means the judge decides everything.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in this case, it would have been, if it happened in Texas, it would have been Governor Abbott deciding
Mm-hmm.
to execute or not, right?
Period.
One person.
Yeah.
It's the only opinion that matters. So we're already messing up.
Mm-hmm.
We're already comparing apples and oranges. But that's fine. Here's the other thing, and Christians, you're not going to like it when I say this. You're going to be super unhappy when I say this. Jesus' trial wasn't a sham.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
But look at it from the Jewish perspective. Look at it from the Roman perspective. Was this person claiming to be
the King of Kings?
Yes. Was this person claiming to be greater than Caesar?
Yeah.
Yes. If you're a Christian, you have to believe that, right? You can't let that go. So was it a sham trial? No. Did they still get it wrong? Yes. Right? You're going to compare that to this. So that wasn't a sham trial.
Mm-mm.
This wasn't a sham trial. And so, I have deep close friends that I grew up with that are in, I'm just going to say it, kind of in the cult of Trump. I have friends that are conservative, but they haven't gotten hook, line, and sinker like some of the other people I'm around. Those people that I'm around will say, they will say things like Trump is the chosen one, and this is, we've got to vote for him because although he's not a good person, he's the one that is in the party of the values that most aligns with us, so we have to vote for him. Number one, I don't got to vote for anybody I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
If Jesus was running and I didn't want to vote for him, guess what? I have it right here, right? So my concern with the church is we are not saying anything about, we're just letting it happen. All the great names, all the great theologians of our time, the MacArthurs, who I think is a trash theologian, but that's personal opinion. All these people that I have that are deep, close friends, they are convinced that the only way to save the Christian faith is to vote for this man. How do you get there? Did Trump do that?
Mm-hmm.
No. We said this before. Trump is not the problem. I don't like the man personally. I could go probably about 80% don't like his politics, right? Most of I'll give credit where credit's due. He had a couple of things that he did, just like every president. But by in general, I don't agree with him. And as a person, no, we would definitely not go get a coffee together ever. That's never going to happen. But as a church, we have become silent. And silence is compliance. If people are in your church saying Trump is the chosen one, he's the one that Jesus wants to be president, and you're not speaking out against that, Trump is not the problem. You are the problem. You're the problem, especially within the confines of the church, right? So
That's why I tell people, they look at me funny, John, when I say this, but I try to be serious. Some of y'all need to watch the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And the reason,
or read the book, whatever.
No, watch it, because the reason why I need to say that is because if you follow me, just for a second. We look at things from a democracy. Jesus was raised in a medieval time, king,
divine right of kings.
Yeah. So therefore, we don't look at things correctly because we think that all these processes. You just said it. Kings speak, actions happen. Period. Nobody or person speaking for the king.
Right.
In this case, Pilate. Mm-hmm. Jesus said to Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world." When kings hear that, they get antsy.
You have a kingdom.
See,
that makes you a king.
So therefore, there cannot be two kings.
Right.
He said, "My kingdom, not my state, not my jurisdiction, my kingdom." In the minds of kings, that's huge.
That's a problem.
If you got to tell somebody you're a king, you're not the king.
Right.
Jesus was not bragging. He answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "My kingdom is not of this world." That is blasphemy, sedition in their mind.
In their eyes, yeah. That's a challenge to their.
So therefore, when you look at these things, you got to look at these things from the point of view of not how we see things. Okay, they say Trump is a felon. They say he's felon. There are some felons. We're talking about that should be. If you smoke marijuana, why should it stop you from voting?
Right.
Certain things you shouldn't. I mean, dissent. But when you talk about the laws of men, you got to be careful because Trump did something. He broke the law. But there was earlier times when things what we call illegal now were legal. What would you call them?
Right.
So laws are only good as, just like kings, are only good as the kings who make them or the people who at that time made certain laws.
Yeah.
There was some that what we would call felons now, but we don't go back and say, well, they're a felon. No, we don't. They were because under the law at that time. So when you use these words like laws, they're dangerous. The argument that people are making is the one that don't make sense. They think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, he's a felon, so I'm a felon. I should be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your state again says you couldn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out. There's nothing in the Constitution that says convicted felons can vote.
Nothing.
Look at the Constitution. Your state won't allow you to vote for a constitutional federal office because states
in
are
your
legal.
state it's illegal. Not
So,
the federal government.
You feel me?
Yeah.
The Constitution doesn't stop you from voting.
Nope.
Your state, which has states' rights, is stopping you from voting. When Jesus Jesus was under arrest. He was taken before the Jews. They sent him to Pilate because they wanted him, and he went through the process at the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you go through the process of the time, that is not what you call a sham.
Yeah.
Just like people trying to say now that, well, Trump is not a convict. Yes, he is. You might not like it. He went through the process.
Yeah.
The state of New York, which has a jurisdiction, so we pick and choose.
Yeah, and
we choose. Then like you said about sham. No, it was what it was.
And that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah.
This is a problem with a lot of people. This is another thing that I end up getting into with a lot of people who are, well, this is all President Biden. President Biden did this.
Oh.
Okay. Well, let's think about this logically. Okay. Here's what we know. We know for a fact that the Attorney General was given this case. Mm-hmm. This case that Trump was just convicted on. Mm-hmm. The AG of the United States was given this case to consider trying. Mm-hmm. He declined it. Mm-hmm. The Biden administration, guess who the federal AG takes their orders from? Mm-hmm. The President of the United States. Mm-hmm. That means President Biden said, I'm not touching this. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a political hot potato. I'm not touching this. Right? Which politically was probably a really smart move. So that's a little irritating when people are like, well, Biden's doing this. No, Biden had the opportunity to do this, and he didn't do it. He actually declined to press charges. And then the state of New York and the AG from New York City said, you know what? No, we'll file the charges. Mm-hmm. The state of New York will file the charges. Sure. So if you have an issue with who filed the charges, it's not this other president that you vilified, and in some cases rightfully so. I'm not saying Biden's a clean president by any stretch of the imagination. Or a politician for that matter. But I will say, what we know as a fact is Biden declined to prosecute this case. Mm-hmm. And the AG from New York City took it on, filed the case, got the conviction. So you have an issue. It can't be with the federal. The federal government didn't do this. And by rights, that was probably a very, very smart move to not have the federal government do this on a former president while a president of the opposing party is in office, because that looks funny. So that didn't happen, and I think that's how you know you're in a cult, is when I present you with facts, and those facts aren't enough on any stretch for you to go, well, I never considered that, right? Or I never. Well, no, it's facts. Well, that's not how it happened. It's got to be Biden. No, it doesn't have to be Biden. I'm telling you, the facts are this, but you continue to push that narrative. We have that problem in the church. We'll tell you, hey, the first two pastors were women. The very first people that came running from the tomb to preach the gospel were women. Mm-hmm. Well, no, because Peter and this. And no, let your patriarchy get out of the way for a second. Yeah. Get your cult attitude out of the way and just take the L. The L is, this is a fact in Scripture that you hold to be infallible, right? It has no errors in it. You said that, not me. And so now we're going to own that. If that's what you believe about it, then we're going to take it to its logical conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
The first two pastors were female. And you can feel any way you want about that, but what you can't do is say it's not a fact. And it's the same thing with Trump.
People actually believe, I mean, when it broke, they actually believe, oh, that's it. What are you talking about? What's it? And
People
think,
celebrating. I'm like,
and,
what are you celebrating
and you think
about?
that that's going to make, just because he can't vote for himself, I mean, he can't run for office.
That's one vote. It's one vote.
I mean, he can't run for office, though.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then the governor of that state can give him a special exception.
Yep.
It's called states' right. And so we because we don't do research, because we get caught up in the mainstream. This what Gen Z is talking about. Y'all just do stuff, and you think nobody ever told you, or you shouldn't listen to, that if this man get convicted, he couldn't run. Where the narrative start at?
I don't know.
You thought something magic was going to happen. You thought your problem was going to be washed away.
Yep.
Because first of all, my friend asked me, say, you think you know why I knew he was going to get convicted? Man, you can run for a lot of things. I can send you a text and say, man, you took that out of context.
Yeah.
I can, but when you got my voice
On the phone.
and the jury can hear that, and then they can make their own mind what the context is.
Yep.
But I still get hyped up about it because first of all, my belief system is he's just a boogeyman.
Yeah.
The country is the problem.
Yeah, he ain't the problem.
What's happening here is the country.
Yeah.
What's happening here is what 300 million people are allowing to happen. This stuff is being allowed to happen. What happened here is a silent, dead, non-existent, irrelevant church. This is what's happening here, who's getting caught up in things that they're not supposed to be caught up in instead of being the salt of the earth. This well, no matter what side you're on, what's not, because what's going on in Gaza right now is Trump is not at the helm yet.
Nope.
If he even gets back. So what are you saying about that? And that's a lot worse than some hush money.
Let's be real.
I care about them. Where's the signs on that? So what's happening in the country is not these two actors that you see on the stage. It's what we say all the time. If you listen to our show, the preacher is preaching heresy, and we don't use that word loudly. Heretic stuff, right? That we've heard using the N word, right?
Violence.
Not somebody told it violent.
Straight
and
violence.
what are the people doing? Amen. And just hollering and screaming.
Hooping.
And this is what we're doing in the country. But we want to look at the fact. Well, they got enablers.
Yeah.
That's what has always, we talk about that, has always, forget what he's saying, listen to the crowd. And I remind Jesus, 1 week later, Hosanna the King of Kings. Next week later, give us Barabbas. Yep. We're the
problem.
We're the problem.
Yeah.
We're the fickle ones. The church, the society, we're the fickle ones. Y'all. I mean, it just blows to. Y'all can't even run. This is it. If you read the Constitution, you knew. Did you take civics?
I know I had to take it in high school. I had to do a whole.
There was nothing in the Constitution. 35 years of age.
Natural born citizen.
Nowhere it said about a conviction.
And here we are.
But I'm saying they can't vote. That's your state. That's a state issue.
Yeah.
The federal government's not telling them they can't vote.
Yeah, to me, it's just the blind ignorance in the face of facts.
Yeah.
Right. It's the facts are there for you to look up. Like I had this conversation with this person. Oh gosh, this was a couple months ago. Came over, hang out. We're hanging out, and I think we're talking about Texas history or something. This is kind of nerds I hang out with. But we're talking about Texas history, and I was like, we're talking about how Texas became independent, and that kind of evolved into a conversation about the Electoral College. And I said, well, I said my issue with the Electoral College is it's built on a system where land actually voted, right? So it was built on a system where landowners voted, right? So the landowners made all the decisions. And this guy looks at me, and he goes, maybe we should get back to that. Maybe people who own land, maybe they should really be, because they're vested, right? Maybe they should be the only ones that vote. And I looked at him for a second, and I said, we don't see eye to eye on politics. He's like, yeah, I know that. I'm like, okay, well, I own land, and maybe 0.015 acres, but I own land in this state. You rent. Are you telling me you know under that system you would not be voting? You know that, right? And he's like, well, I'm like, no. You're not gonna weasel your way out of this one.
Yeah.
In this place, in this false reality, you're telling me that you would be okay with me making your political decisions. Think about that, because we don't see eye to eye. He's like, well, I'm like, okay. And he weasels his way out of it, try to come up with, well, in that case, I would go buy land. Would you? If you think if the system knew that owning land was the key to making decisions, you think they wouldn't start putting restrictions on land ownership? Right? Because that's how it was back then. You had to be a certain gender.
Yeah.
You had to be a certain color.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you could vote, because that's the only way you can own land.
Yeah.
Right? So you're saying, but the whole problem with that whole interaction, if that's what you want to believe, I don't agree with you, but that's fine. Believe whatever you want. It's the beauty of living in this country. You can believe in the flying spaghetti monster, right? The problem I have with that entire interaction, no homework was done on the part of this person. They just blurted something out. That has become the trademark of yours and my generation. We have this really bad habit of just blurting visceral out without fact checking it, without looking it up, without verifying that what we're saying is true. And that's why you get, if he gets convicted, he's never going to be president. That is false. Oh, well, maybe landowners should be the only ones voting. Well, now you can't vote. This is how you end up getting like these packages of things that get voted through Congress, and a bunch of stuff I really don't want gets through because there's one or two things I really, really want, and I'm willing to just let the rest slide. Right? And so here we are with a bunch of misinformed, and what is the church doing? I mean, worse than supporting it, they're doing nothing. Not saying anything, being fickle. Well, they're entitled to have their beliefs. Yes, they are entitled to have their beliefs, but are they entitled to speak heresy in your church? Are they entitled to claim any person? I'm not just saying Trump. Any person is equal to Jesus Christ, because that's true heresy in the Christian church. So, it is fascinating the amount of misinformation and then just a blind adherence to this misinformation because it matches what I want to believe is true. No homework.
And this shows you how people don't really understand the country they live in. We are 50 different states with the federal government, but these 50 different, what always bumped its head is what the 50 different states want to do against the federal government. That has always been our problem. You're not, things are not happening because what the government's saying. Generally, it's happening because what your state is saying.
Right.
And people, after all what we've been through, slavery, it was, they had to pass the 13th Amendment to end it. They had to pass the 19th Amendment to end women's right to vote because states wouldn't let women vote. It's always bumped its head, and you still, all this history, you still don't understand you still don't understand Howard. You still get caught up in this stuff because they don't understand that this is, you say it's democracy, but it's really a representative thing. It's not a true democracy. It's not particularly for that office. Last time I remember is Trump has never won a popular vote. Hillary Clinton beat him by 3 million votes. Who was president? Why? Because the Constitution, that word again, says this is how it's done.
Yep.
We don't elect presidents by popular vote.
Yep. Well, and this is actually what I was telling another friend of mine on the left side of the political spectrum. They were like, yeah, Trump, blah blah blah, he's convicted, blah blah, and then I was like, well, constitutionally he can still run. It's, oh, that's crap. That needs to change. I'm like, hold on. I'm not saying you're wrong or right, but just follow me through to your logical conclusion. Do you remember 4 years ago when Pennsylvania allowed their counting of their votes to go till midnight, and there was another state that allowed it to only go till 9 p.m., right? And the reason Biden won Pennsylvania is because his voters voted later, and he won Pennsylvania, or something like that. Do you know why that happened? Because the Constitution doesn't dictate how those elections are run. So the state can decide when they stop doing it, if they can do mail-in ballots like Washington the state does, or the state decides that. So you're upset because the Constitution didn't work for you this time. But you had a very different energy when the Constitution, you were able to weasel your way into something else because of the Constitution. You got to take the good. You got to take the good with the bad. You got to take this L. I mean, I may not like it, but you got to take this L because you got the W last time through the same process of Constitution versus states' rights and laws.
Yeah, and how do you think my ancestors felt when the Constitution says all men are created equal, but they didn't have slaves in certain states? It's always been a tension. It's always been because it was legal to have slaves in those states, because those states said it was legal.
Yep.
This whole thing started because certain sovereignty in certain states didn't want this. So we have to understand how this stuff works. And if you don't, then they always say, well, Jesus, what did Jesus vote? Jesus had no concept of voting. He went in. It
would have been a very foreign concept.
It was no concept. I mean, they was under. They didn't send Jesus to the local district attorney's office.
Right.
Sent to the throne room of a king.
Also,
Watch again, a throne of a king.
It's also important to remember Palestine wasn't a part of the Roman Empire. It was a colony.
Colonized.
It was a colonized area. So let's just be clear.
Yeah.
They didn't even have the right of having a senator.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about
representation.
No representation.
What are you talking about?
Not in a colony.
Y'all need to watch the game. It'll show you how this stuff works. It's medieval. It's kings. It's and kings. When you start talking about other kings and thrones and kingdoms, they get very antsy. Yeah. They don't heads start coming off.
What's that?
Because they don't. That's very unsettling to them. Yeah. And so we just. But I look at this and so I'm looking for having a good discussion on this because. Yeah. People are but people have been arguing for years that certain people should be able to vote. This is nothing new because this man got convicted and is going to still run for office. This has been an argument, but the notion that you thought that all of a sudden because he got convicted, well, they were just going to say, okay, well he can. It doesn't work that way.
And you believe that because you didn't do your homework. Yeah. All you had to do was
set your own stuff up. You set your own stuff up. Yeah. Congratulations,
you just played yourself.
How can a convicted?
Let me show you how. In the Constitution.
It's not prohibited.
I'll show you exactly how it works.
I mean. So. Yeah. Yep.
Well, great show. Yeah. We try to, if it's a timely topic, we're gonna want to cover it and talk about it, and its consequences for society and the church especially. If you like what you heard today, please give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook, Bishop Brothers. Find us on TikTok, Bishop Brothers. You can find us here on YouTube, Bishop Brothers. And we'll be expanding more, and there'll be more information soon on the podcast. And if you're hearing this on the podcast, and I guess you don't need that information, but the podcast will be out soon, and we'll get this content pushed out. And we're just excited to have you guys along for the journey, and thanks for stopping by and enjoying it with us.
All right. See you later. See you next time.
On the real, oh yeah, this on the real. On the real, oh yeah, this on the real. You know the deal, oh yeah, you know the deal. Just keep it real, just keep it real.